Hello, learners. Welcome to this edition of Knowing How to Deal with Clients and Knowing Your Client Better. In this session, we'll be talking about the entire experience of reading a client, understanding what is the meaning of a client, and how can clients be acquired and understood, especially in a business of event management where there is no physical exchange of any product or any uh, structured form of delivery. And this becomes critical where the spoken word between a client and an agency plays a pivotal role in a delivery of a service which is rendered by the event agency to a client and accepted in all norms by the client, which eventually results in remuneration being paid to the agency. So often, the stumbling block between a client and agency is the very first step, which is where how do you get to know your client and how do you work with the client? How do you understand his needs? Becomes a paramount understanding, which then builds into a relationship which is profitable, which is result oriented, and which delivers the objectives that the client set out in the first place to execute the event. So let's dive deep into this session and talk about what it is to know a client, understand a client's needs, and how those needs can be converted into a business opportunity for agencies. So let's speak more about uh, knowing a client better. So, getting to know your client better is the subject for our discussion in this session. My name is Jatin Rajput. I am the co founder of Consumer Links, which is a 25-year-old event management and special experiences agency. I'm also the head of department at the Whistling Woods International School of Event Management in Mumbai, India. So, our agenda for today is who is a client? What is the client's perspective? How does a client come to you with a need or an expressed desire for business? How do you take an event brief? How do you structure a formula which strikes a balance in understanding every aspect that could possibly impact your event and therefore your client's express needs and therefore the final delivery of the product or the service that you're going to render? Writing a creative brief or a technical brief, uh, creating the perfect match between client expectations, agency delivery, and eventually marrying the objectives of what the client set out to execute the event with the expectations of the audience or the spectators or the stakeholders or the customers who would come and witness this event. So, what constitutes a great uh, brief, and therefore, what constitutes a client? A client could be a person with a need for communication. Let me correct you here, focused communication. Well, there are many forms of communication available in the market, which could be in the form of conventional advertising, print, radio, television, out of home, and so on and so forth. The need to target a customer with a dedicated and focused kind of communication is what events actually delivers. So, it is scalable, it is measurable, it is to a focus group, it reaches out to a specific audience, it kind of connects with the people in a specific way, and it enables the client or our customer, in the case of the agency, to actually communicate his objectives in a very refined way to a set of people who are the core believers or expect to be the core believers of what he's trying to sell to them. So this enablement of focused communication is what is events is all about. And it is events are designed for people who are looking at focused communication to tell their customers or tell their stakeholders or tell their buyers that this is me, this is how I want to come across to you, and these are the services or products I offer to you, and therefore Can we connect? And can you buy into my idea or my vision or my thought? A client is a seller of products. So it could be cars, it could be phones, it could be pencils, it could be erasers, it could be anything under the sun. So products are physical devices that you buy, whether it's a food product, whether it's a utility product, whether it's a daily need product, whether it's a white goods segment, whether it's a FMCG product, whether it's groceries, whether it's so anything that is physically consumed by you in any form is a product which a brand or a service provider or a manufacturer or a shopkeeper is selling. Uh, and he wants to communicate to his consumers and connect with them and tell them that, hey, this is me and this is what I manufacture or I sell. And I have an interesting idea to tell you about this product and how it will benefit your life. And can you buy into that idea? So that whole process of storytelling about the product and convincing the buyer to buy into that product is what event management is all about. A service provider. So today's business is all about customer integration and customer service. So a lot of physical product manufacturers are also outreaching and providing after sales service. So many times you have a large grocery chain sending you an email and asking you, how did you like our service? How did you like our product? How was the shopping experience when you came to our grocery store? So today, a service provider is more extended in terms of ideology. But if I look at it in the true sense, then a service provider is someone who provides a service. So it could be your local barber, it could be your local mobile telephone service provider, it could be an airline company, it could be a hotel, it could be a restaurant. So anyone who offers not a physical product, but a service that is rendered, which makes you feel good, is what a service provider is classified. So again, when I look at constitutes of clients, it could be sellers of products, service providers, someone who needs focused communication, an evangelist who wants to impress his ideas. So here again, we're talking about someone who has a vision. So it could be a visionary, it could be an educator, it could be someone who's trying to outreach his ideas and ideologies and create a community. So it could be a poet who wants to go out there, an artist who wants to express his performance by connecting with his fans, his lovers of music, or his performing arts, a theater artist, an actor. So anybody in the business of conveying an idea, okay, to a group of people and communicating his idea and buying their time and buying their belief in his idea is an evangelist. And this evangelist could be a performer, could be a public speaker, could be a preacher, could be anybody who is trying to sell concepts or ideas to people. So this again is a potential client. A politician. So I've used the term politician primarily because it will be easier for you to understand the example that I'm trying to give you here. Anyone who tries to influence people. So today, there are many people on the social media who are influencers. Okay, so these could also be people who garner public support. However, a politician is specifically looking at public support because that is what brings him into office. That is what brings him into business of trying to create social change or trying to bring about betterment of society, which is his own vision, his own agenda as a part of his service platform. So like a politician, any influencer, if I would call it in a broad sense, is someone who is trying to garner public support, and he could be a potential client. Any individual who simply wants to celebrate his dreams and he wants to turn them into a reality. So this individual is someone who is wanting to get married or wants to celebrate his child's birthday or wants to celebrate his own birthday or wants to celebrate a momentary occasion in his life which is special to him. And it's his belief and his idea that by doing this celebration, he will be able to impress upon the people that are connected to his life, to his family, to his society, to his community. He wants to engage with them, and express his joy, his sorrow, his grief, his thoughts, his ideas, and tries to bring them together in that moment of his, and connect with them. So again, when you look at social celebrations today, the person that is trying to communicate is trying to communicate his inner emotion to an audience or to people, and that is what again becomes a client. So if we talk about the client's perspective, now when clients come to agencies, they could have very well done this themselves. Long ago, when event agencies were not into play, many a times client would do this himself, but it was brick and mortar. It was not organized. It was not thought into, because while the event manager is a specialist, he does this for a living and he understands the process. For many a clients, it is a first time. It is a time that where they've come up with an idea, they've come up with a belief, they've come up with a concept, they've come up with a product, and they say that now I want to outreach this to my end user. So how do I go the distance? He may have seen certain things somewhere and he may try to replicate them. But then getting into the finer detail, getting into the process, getting into the understanding of the steps that would be taken to execute that idea and deliver the experience to an end user is still not a very clear vision. And therefore clients today are looking at the event manager to come forth and actually share his experience and deliver the steps that would enable a great communication, a great experience. So again, if you look at going to a doctor and seeking medical advice, or going to a lawyer and seeking legal advice, there are steps that a doctor would follow up. So he would first do a diagnosis. Okay, he would understand your malady, understand the symptoms, understand what you're going through. So while everybody says I've got a common cold, it could be different for different people depending on their symptoms. So like that, an event manager first understands the problem of the client, and then he puts in his advice and tells steps that would be enabled to reduce that problem and come up with a solution. So the doctor would then obviously give you medicines, or he would ask you to do some tests, and then he would advise some medicines, and then he would follow up with the doctor and say, I'm feeling better or I'm feeling worse. And then he would further prescribe a course of study or medicines, or further prescribe some more tests to diagnose the problem. And then you finally become better. So same way, in events, we follow a step-by-step process, and that is how you get to know a client better. And once you understand the steps and once you understand the process, it's going to be a much easier delivery mechanism, in terms of delivering the end result to a client. And that would lead to a successful event, and that would lead to a repeat buying to your agency. Remember, in our business, it's very difficult to go out there and constantly seek business with new clients. So often the challenge for us is that how can we retain businesses? How can we create influencers or endorsers who would actually talk about us as an agency and say, hey, I work with this person and I think he understands the problem better. He understands events better. He understands the executing method better. He is a sound consultant. He delivers solutions much more efficiently, and therefore you should work with him. So that becomes a repeat business. So while conventionally I would work with a corporate client in the agency that I run, and the client would keep buying into me and keep coming back to me because I'm able to provide him solutions every single time that result in successes. But in the case of social celebrations, I won't get married every single day. So if I get married once and I've had a successful event, I would probably recommend you in my family. So it could be cousins, it could be uncles, aunties, and whoever is having a social celebration. And if I then further choose to have a birthday party or a childbirth in my family, I would probably then invite you. I would then invite you for my child's first birthday and probably his future birthdays. And probably if things work well, I would probably invite you for my child's wedding too. So that's how relationships are built, in the social circuit. But again, it also works as word of mouth, where people see a particular event in the social circle and they invite or ask the agency to come back saying, we liked your work in so and so wedding, so can you come back and do something for us? And that is how clients see you. So what does a client need? A client needs a solution to his problem. So he'll come back to you and say, hey, I have a problem, and can you help me find a way to execute and reach out to my end user and give him a particular type of experience which I'm seeing as a solution. I have never done this before, or I've done this, but not this way before. So every client, whether it's the first event or his repeat events, is looking at something unique to come out of it. His problem is always going to be distinct. So it's not a cut-paste job where there is a common solution to every malady. Every event is a different parameter. Every event has a different dynamic structure. Every event has a different method of execution. Every client, remember, is a human being, and every human being thinks differently. So when we are working on events, we are working with people. We are a people's business. So when we are communicating with people, whether it be clients, whether it be our vendor partners, whether it be our stakeholders, whether it be our own teams, we are dealing with people. And when we're dealing with these people, we are trying to create solutions which will lead to better enablement. So when a client comes to me and he asks me saying, I have never done this, I say, relax. Let me know what you want to do. And let me come back to you with a solution that is different from what you did last time. So most clients are looking at you from saying, I want to do a seamless, effortless, hassle-free experience. I want to deliver my thought to my audience in a very beautiful manner. I want them to enjoy this whole thing that I'm trying to put up for them. I want them to believe in what I'm trying to convey to them. I want them to buy into my idea, buy into my thought, buy into my product in the most conducive environment. And they should feel extremely pleased to be with me. And if they are happy with me in those moments that they share with me, whether it's 15 minutes, half an hour, 90 minutes, 3 hours, or whatever, I'm sure they will accept me and they will come back to me. If not today, maybe tomorrow, because they will remember me for this experience. So that is what a client is looking at every single time he's doing an event. It doesn't matter what is the scale, it doesn't matter what type of event it is, but every client is looking at this kind of solution when he's coming to you for an event. Given the price, given the people, given the production value, given the purpose, what can you achieve for me? So every client is going to say, I have a budget. I need to reach out to X number of people, whether it is a one-on-one, one-to-many, or one-to-million. I want it at a particular production value. I want it to look like this. I want it to be at this scale. I want it to be in this format. I want it to, have this kind of finesse or texture or quality or result. I have a purpose. I want to do this because this is what I want to achieve at the end of the day. What can you do in this process to meet the price, meet the people, build the value of production, and of course, meet my purpose? So that is his perspective. How well do you understand me? How well do you read me as a client? How well do you read my customers? How well do you understand them? How well can you communicate with them? How can you marry us together? This is what a client is looking at. If you have this formula right, you've got a win on your hand. So every time you're connecting with a client, remember, this is the farman, this is the formula. This is typically a template that every client is looking at. So if you've checked every one of these bullet points that you see on the slide, I think you've reached the end goal that a client will believe and say, yes, there is a buying. Yes, I have someone who understands my needs. And yes, I can work with this person. So let's move forward and understand what are the steps that are taken to get to know a client better. The first step is a brief. Okay, it is one of the most fundamental and most crucial steps of making a great event. Often, 99 times out of 100, an event fails because both the client as well as the agency didn't get the brief right. So taking a brief and giving one, okay, is an art. You need to understand the formula, you need to understand the process, you need to understand the steps, and you need to make sure that you implement those steps in the structure that they are laid out every single time. So what we're going to discuss in this session and the session to follow is the steps that you need to take to know a client better. And it starts with the brief. So I'm going to spend more time talking about how to take a brief, because that is a fundamental learning which will enable you every single time to deliver a successful event to a client. So if getting to know the client is a necessity, then this is the actual process which will enable to get to know a client. And whatever you do with that client afterwards, whether it's in the form of implementation, in the form of idea execution, in the form of production, it's all like a domino effect. So if you get this step right, the rest of it is all going to fall into place most brilliantly and most effectively, and enable you to deliver the solution for your client absolutely seamlessly. So it is the backbone of the event making process. So every single time you're looking at, connecting with a client and actually getting a client to buy into you, remember the brief is the first step to success. So if you're not doing the brief right, if you're not following the formula correctly, chances are you're going to fail many a times. And failure is not an option for us, because most of the time you get one hit with a client. So if you're going to meet someone or get connected to a client, he's going to start sizing you up and evaluating you on the first instant. He's going to understand the depth of how you understand or read events. He's going to try and understand your expertise in understanding what he is and who he is and what he wants to do. He's going to also read and understand from you how well do you understand the problem and what kind of instantaneous solutions you could come up with, which are basic hygiene that is required to deliver a concept or an event. So you may not go and meet a client and share an idea on the spot. If you can do that, it's brilliant. But getting to read him, asking him the right questions, understanding the problem, delivering him the solutions, and explaining to him the process that would be required to take his problem and convert it into a solution is something that is reassuring. And if you do that successfully in the first meeting, it will enable him to call you again and say, hey, please come back to me with a proposal, and I would like to evaluate it, I would like to understand it, and then move forward with it. So that is how a brief is critical for the success of an event. So the most crucial step in making of a great event, it is often considered the primary stumbling block. Most agencies, as I said, get it wrong in the first time. So if you want to be successful, you need to get your brief correct. A client is going to judge you by the ability of how well you understand and comprehend his brief, and how well do you use that brief to create a story, create a concept, create a structure, and come back with a successful event plan. A client is also going to take you on this by saying that, how well do you take a brief? So taking a brief requires elementary knowledge, understanding the brand. So if you're an agency, you would want to understand what your client is all about. And if you're a client, you need to understand who are you and what are you trying to do with a service provider or an event agency, and how do you employ an event agency and use them to deliver what you're trying to convey to your consumers. So often understanding your own brand and being enabled to probe and also explain in a systematic manner what is the process is a requirement that is required both from the client side and the agency side. So probing a client in a systematic manner, understanding his requirements, going step by step, and putting it into perspective is what will enable you to deliver successful events. Remember, working with clients means patience, means being logical. So you would not commit or buy into an idea which cannot be practically implemented. So if I want a UFO to land on the stage, it doesn't happen any which ways, because a UFO doesn't exist. So being logical in what can be done and can't be done within the limitations of price, production value, people, and the purpose is an essential that you need to figure out. Also need to figure out and understand is how well you comprehend the client's needs. How well are you accustomed to jargon? So if a client throws at you something like OTT, okay, so what is OTT? OTT is over the top, okay, or OTT is a platform today that is used besides the conventional television. So understanding jargon, understanding what the client is trying to speak in terms of his brief is very important as a part of comprehension. So if you don't understand, please ask and say, hey, I didn't understand this. Can you explain this? Because I'm not from your brand. I'm not from your product category. I don't understand your industry so well because I'm not into manufacturing. Can you explain this so I can, probably provide you a better solution? Uh, Sense of reasoning. So reasoning out to the client is very important because then you can actually put logic to the idea and you can also explain your challenges in executing an event. So being practical and being reasonable to say that these are the limitations and not overcommitting and then under delivering is again something that will hold you in good stead with the client. So these are the key buzzwords that you need to keep in mind when you're trying to get a client to buy into you. So knowing a client and understanding and taking a perfect brief requires patience, logic, uh, comprehension, and a sense of reasoning. So every invention starts with a brief, whether it's a car. So any car, and there are plenty of cars that you would know and have seen on the roads today. Each model is different. Each model has unique features, whether it is driving comfort, whether it is speed, whether it is fuelage capacity, whether it is mileage. So when you buy a car or a discerning customer goes to buy a car, he is looking at a certain set of values that he believes in. So I may go and buy a car which gives me good average for the fuel consumption. I may buy a car because I like speed. I may buy a car because I want to drive long and I need driving comfort. So the design of the car starts with a brief. What are you designing for, or whom are you designing for, or how will that customer get enabled to buy into the product? That is a brief. So a car starts with a design, and for the design, you need a brief. A building, a house could be multiple rooms, like a living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, a study room, and so on and so forth. So what is the blueprint of a building? A building could be multi-story, it could just be a bungalow, so every house has a need, and the customer expresses a need. So he would want a certain space that is spacious, or he would want something that fits within his budget, which will enable him to live comfortably, but will still have basic amenities. So that again is the blueprint. So the blueprint of a building, which is a design of the building, enables you to understand and say, this is how eventually the construction will come up, and that is what will be the final product which I buy into as far as housing is concerned. A movie. So any movie starts with a screenplay, scene by scene, how the movie will run, dialogues, visuals, expression, artists, talent, the back end talent, and so on and so forth. And that is what will make the movie. And what kind of audience am I catering to? So am I catering to the masses who loves a pot boiler, which will want the names, the actors, the performers, and they would like to see the glamour on the screen? Or am I talking to a niche audience which is looking at a subject-driven concept, and they want to get enabled and talk and understand how it works? So for every single product, service, or uh, concept, okay, there is a brief, there is a start point, there is a storytelling, and that storytelling is what starts with a brief. So with this, we come to an end of this session, but we will see you again in the next session, where we will talk about how to learn and take a brief, and what are the key highlights of and the process of going into a systematic structure of taking and giving a brief. So thank you so much for joining in, and I look forward to seeing you again. God bless, and see you soon.